On this Friday night, Ottawa has a deal. The Liberals and the NDP find their agreement on national Pharmacare, what the program could cover as both parties preserve their political pact. The harrowing experiences of a Ukrainian soldier captured by Russia, what he remembers as a prisoner of war.
People were tortured and several people were killed.
As Canada and its allies target Moscow's war machine with more sanctions. Plus, another Canadian airline down, what Lynx Air's sudden shuttering means for cost-conscious travelers.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Neetu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news out of Ottawa tonight. After months of negotiations, the NDP and minority Liberal government say they have reached a deal to start a new national Pharmacare program. The final details will be ironed out over the coming days, but sources tell Global News the deal includes a framework for a single payer system, along with full coverage for birth control and diabetes medications. And David Baxter joins us now from our Ottawa bureau with more on this reported deal. So, David, what can you tell us about how we got here?
Well, Neetu, a senior source at the NDP says that they have a deal with the Liberals to introduce a framework for single-payer pharmacare, similar to how healthcare works across the country. The government now also saying that, yes, they do have a deal, and there'll be more to say on this issue next week. This is a central part of the supply and confidence agreement that sees the NDP support the government on all confidence votes in exchange for passing key priorities. The deadline to keep that deal was initially the end of 2023, but it was pushed back to the end of February to get this legislation introduced.
So what can Canadians expect will be covered here, David?
Now, in exchange for the extension, the NDP said they were going to push for immediate coverage on diabetes medication and contraception. Both those drug types, according to the NDP, will be in this deal. The NDP says the contraception coverage will be similar to what exists provincially in BC. This includes birth control, IUDs, and emergency contraceptives. For diabetes, insulin for type 1 and type 2 diabetes will be covered in the deal. Brand name medications like Ozempic won't be in the deal, but some generic medications may be covered where available. For devices like insulin pumps, the NDP says this deal includes a plan to work with the provinces to help cover the costs of these devices. Now, all of this requires new legislation, so once the bill is tabled sometime next week, it will have to go through the standard parliamentary process before any of this can take effect. Neetu?
All right, David Baxter in Ottawa tonight. Thanks for that, David. It is February 24th in Ukraine, and 2 years ago, Russia launched its unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and it is not letting up. There was a fresh round of bloodshed today. Russian drone and missile attacks killed at least 4 people and severely damaged residential and commercial buildings in southern and eastern parts of Ukraine. There are also reports Russia lost a rare A-50 radar plane. Ukraine says its forces brought down the aircraft over the Azov Sea. It would be a major blow to Russia's battered air force, which has lost a reported 9 of its best planes in just 1 month, including another A-50 in January. Today, Canada and the U.S. announced major new sanctions on Russian individuals and entities supporting the war. As Congress struggles to reach a deal on providing more aid to Ukraine, the U.S. has turned to other ways to slow Russia's war machine and apply pressure to its economy. Redmond Shannon reports.
U.S. Democrats roll into Ukraine 2 years after Russian forces invaded the country en masse.
Being here makes us feel so strong.
Washington and its NATO allies are now deeper into this war than many ever imagined, and hoping to dig deeper still. The group of senators pressuring U.S. Republicans back in Congress to help pass a $60 billion military aid package.
History will judge you harshly if you block this very necessary American aid to Ukraine.
Kyiv is still standing.
In the meantime, the American president gave details of another large sanctions package aiming to stifle Russia's war effort.
I'm announcing more than 500 new sanctions. We in the United States are going to continue to ensure that Putin pays the price for his aggression abroad and repression at home.
Canada coordinated measures with the US Friday, sanctioning another 153 entities and 10 individuals.
We stepped up with howitzers.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posting this video to mark the anniversary.
If we allow Putin to redraw the map as he pleases, the world will look much different and much worse.
Among those sanctioned by Canada, Putin's longtime aide, Igor Levitin. Others involved in transport and logistics for Russia's military. Canada has committed almost $10 billion to Ukraine over the past 2 years, a quarter of that military aid. On Friday, another NATO member signed a 10-year security pact with Ukraine.
The agreement with Denmark provides for comprehensive defence, political assistance and diplomatic cooperation.
Ukrainian pilots are in Denmark training on US-made F-16 fighter jets.
I would like to see our Danish F-16s in the air in Ukraine before summer.
A sense of unity of purpose and resolve from the West, at least for now, as the full-scale war enters its third year. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And today, Ukraine revealed it has launched investigations into more than 122,000 suspected cases of war crimes since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. According to the UN, more than 10,000 civilians have been killed, including more than 560 children, in what the Russian president is still calling a special military operation. Those not killed risk being captured, and rarely do we hear from those who have lived through such torment. Jagmeet Singh spoke with a Ukrainian soldier who endured more than 10 months inside a Russian camp.
From when you went into captivity to the time you left, it was 32 kilograms.
Yes.
Wow.
You see, it's a sign of muscle atrophy.
Yeah,
Maxim Kolesnikov's body withered away in a Russian prisoner of war camp, but his mind remained strong.
You can't think about captivity every day. You had to think about just about normal life, about something good, something warm.
He found warmth in memories of his daughters, his wife, taking walks. He feasted on simple things that ignited his senses and made him feel alive.
I understood on the first week that we all need to make a plan for our future. It's very important there that you cannot think that it's the end of your life.
Kolesnikov was captured March 20th, 2022. He was fighting to hold back Russian soldiers advancing towards Kyiv. He says they were the first large group of Ukrainian soldiers caught. His neck tattoo made him easy to identify, and says his family saw him in a bit of video broadcast in Russia. In the camp where he was held, it wasn't just soldiers, but regular citizens as well.
People were tortured and several people were killed. And first of all, it's my luck that I wasn't killed in first day.
For 10 months and 15 days, he willed himself to live. He says when they could, the men would impart wisdom of their trades. He learned about hunting and farming, anything to keep their minds occupied. On February 4th, 2023, he planted his feet back on Ukrainian soil. Video from that day led some to refer to Kolesnikov as the Apple Guy. He worries deeply about those still in captivity, especially the average citizen. Everyone, he says, was tortured. Today, the 47-year-old is working as a marketing director for the National Postal Service, and he has a radio show supporting his fellow soldiers. He says because of the torture, his knee is permanently damaged, and he can't fight anymore.
If you had a choice, would you still be in the army?
Yes.
Not even a hesitation?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's war, because it's dangerous for my country, for my family, for my city. I love Kyiv so much.
A love that he sacrificed for. Jagmeet Singh, Global News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
The scars of war are clear in cities right across Ukraine. Not only are residential areas obliterated, but hundreds of cultural and historical sites lay in ruins. According to the United Nations, the cost of reconstruction and recovery in Ukraine is estimated at $486 billion over the next decade. That number will likely grow as Russian forces seize more territory like Avdiivka. Around a fifth of Ukraine remains under Russian control. Tonight, Eric Sorensen looks at Moscow's endgame.
Avdiivka in ruins isn't much of a prize, but in a war close to a standoff, it is important strategically and psychologically. Russia releasing video of its soldiers in control. A year ago, hopes were high that Ukraine's counteroffensive would turn the tide in the war. Glory to heroes, these soldiers chanted after retaking one village. But soon it was apparent the two sides were all but stalemated.
The Russians have dug in. They have been able to repulse the Ukrainian counteroffensive, but I think that Ukrainians have taken measures to defend against further Russian onslaught.
The Russian invasion 2 years ago from the north, the east, and the south suggested Ukraine could fall quickly. Russian troops soon occupied large areas of Ukraine, but by the first anniversary of the war, the Russians had been pushed back into Ukraine's 4 eastern provinces. Now, on the second anniversary, little has changed in overall territory won and lost. Russia made advances in Bakhmut. Ukraine retook Robotynya during its counteroffensive, but Avdiivka fell to Russia in recent weeks. Along the 1,000-kilometer-long front lines, both sides are dug in, and that may be to Russia's advantage.
Vladimir Putin flew in a new supersonic bomber this week, signaling Russia is ready for a long war. With additional weapons from allies like North Korea, an economy that is holding its own, and having crushed any opposition, one pollster says most Russians will back Putin in a long war.
They are ready to maintain this warfare for years and years, because in this long-lasting competition, Russia has great advantage over Ukraine.
For Ukraine, when President Zelensky isn't rallying spirits at home, he's abroad making urgent appeals for weapons. But the U.S. Congress is blocking aid, and Donald Trump, if he wins the U.S. presidency, could break up NATO's support for Ukraine, raising the stakes even higher in the third year of the war.
Putin is clearly calculating that this will be the tipping point.
If all-out victory for Ukraine looks out of reach, so does an end to the war on Russia's terms. We expect a big assault soon, says this Ukrainian soldier. On these barren lands, Ukrainian resolve to defend them is unwavering. Ukraine is a beautiful country, he says. That is what we are fighting for. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has laid out the first post-war plan to his government. In the document, Netanyahu proposes open-ended control over security and civilian affairs in Gaza and proposed that Israel would maintain control over all land west of Jordan, including the occupied West Bank and Gaza. The plan includes the reconstruction of Gaza, but Netanyahu says it would be dependent on its demilitarization. Those ideas were swiftly rejected by Palestinian leaders and run counter to the United States' vision for the region. Ceasefire negotiations are ongoing, with mediators set to hold high-level meetings this weekend in Paris. Shocking video out of BC captured the moment gunfire erupted in a quiet neighborhood, and a warning the video might be disturbing to some. Just after 12:30 a.m. Thursday, multiple shooters opened fire on a black SUV with what appears to be at least one automatic weapon. The driver attempted to get away but crashed into a yard across the street as the heavy gunfire continued. It happened in the city of White Rock, about 50 kilometers southeast of Vancouver. RCMP say roughly 100 rounds of ammunition were fired.
When you hear these type of sounds, and so when I served in the military, I've been under fire and been in those type of situations. Those type of sounds and violence should never be on our streets.
There's a lot being done with regards to these kinds of weapons. We need to recognize that illegal firearms come from a number of ways. Many of them come from across the border from the United States.
4 men were taken to hospital with serious injuries. RCMP say they're still searching for the suspects. The latest Canadian airline to leave the skies. Coming up, the closure of Lynx Air leaves passengers scrambling on the ground. Two English universities in Quebec are launching lawsuits against the provincial government over tuition hikes for out-of-province students. In separate lawsuits, McGill and Concordia say the Quebec government's decision constitutes discrimination under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and that the hikes have damaged the schools' reputations. Both universities say they've recorded a significant drop in applications since last fall. The new tuition rates would bring fees to about $12,000, up from roughly $9,000 for out-of-province students. Less than 2 years after it landed as another low-cost alternative, Lynx Air is set to roll off the runway after obtaining an order for creditor protection. The Calgary-based airline citing significant headwinds over the past year, including rising operating costs, high fuel prices, exchange rates, increased airport charges, and a difficult economic and regulatory environment. The airline's final flights are set for Sunday, and as Anne Gaviola reports, it's leaving the Canadian airline industry with one less contender.
I don't know as of right now. My returning flight was supposed to be on Monday. I don't know what I'm going to do.
And I have to cancel my doctor appointments, the family visit, so all of my plans change.
In the midst of reading week travel and just ahead of March break plans, Lynx Air's decision to go out of business leaves travelers stranded and scrambling. A look inside Lynx's financial black box shows the weight of its burdens.
I've gone through the financials in the bankruptcy filing, and there are some big debts in there. There are outstanding payables to airports, to the government, to their technical operations providers, so it's not a pretty picture.
Though it came as a surprise to many travelers, aviation analysts had an inkling all was not well.
They've been struggling for a while now, and the whole industry is under a fair bit of pressure, particularly the ultra-low-cost carriers.
Wage pressure was mounting too. Lynx flight attendants had just joined the Canadian Union of Public Employees in early February. A CUPE spokesperson tells Global News work is underway to ensure employees get everything they're legally entitled to. And last year, its pilots joined ALPA, the largest pilots union in the world. The stage set for higher labor costs on top of everything else. Lynx prepares to add its name to a long list of grounded airlines that couldn't make a go of it in Canada.
Lots have tried and many have failed.
Flair Airlines and WestJet have offered recovery flights and discounts on Lynx routes to those now scrambling to make alternate travel plans. Lynx's pending demise leaves the Canadian airline landscape with one less low-cost carrier, highlighting how difficult it is for smaller players to stay aloft.
WestJet back in 1996 started up with 3 airplanes, and they've got a very large fleet today. So it is possible, but is not for the faint of heart.
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Fears of an extremist attack on Canadian soil. Ahead, the warning from Canada's intelligence community. Canada's intelligence community is raising the alarm about attacks motivated by the Israel-Hamas conflict. In documents obtained by Global News, government analysts warned of what they called possibilities of mass violence spilling into this country. As Mercedes Stevenson reports, some are now calling on the government to be more transparent and proactive about the warnings.
The federal government agency that assesses the terror threat to Canada is warning that the Israel-Hamas war could increase the risk of an extremist attack on Canadians here at home. In a series of briefings published after October 7th, the Integrated Terrorist Assessment Centre found that extremists motivated by the conflict could attack crowds at events in Canada. It is possible that ideologically and religiously motivated violent extremists and lone actors may be triggered by events and mobilize violence and conduct a mass casualty attack at large gatherings, the documents read. The briefings obtained by Global News through the Access to Information Act warn an attack on gatherings around the holidays where events like parades are, quote, increasingly likely.
We're seeing language kind of riling people up and groups up.
We will fight you as well. Trust me, Hezbollah is here. Hamas is here.
Protests over the war have drawn national attention. The intelligence reports say that while they have been largely, quote, lawful, this does not preclude opportunistic threat actors from joining events and engaging in violent behavior.
What the assessment is saying is there is a possibility that someone
on either side of the issue may be radicalized and may decide to act.
National security sources have told Global News an unprecedented, complicated mix of terror threats in Canada could be exacerbated by the conflict, emboldening groups across the spectrum, from violent white nationalists to ISIS-affiliated lone wolves. The briefings say as the conflict intensifies, religiously and ideologically motivated extremists could increasingly seek to attack Israeli interests, but also Jewish targets, noting foreign extremists have called for attacks on Jewish people as a means to support Palestinians, and that some individuals in Canada have expressed support for Hamas. The ITAC briefings say that mosques, Islamic community centers, and Palestinian targets in Canada are also at risk from violent extremists with anti-Palestinian agendas, and that hate crimes against Muslims are likely to rise. Mercedes Stevenson, Global News, Ottawa.
And tomorrow night, Global News is airing a special report, Rising Hate, Anti-Semitism in Canada. You can watch at 7 p.m. on Global. And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Westwood, Ontario. We love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Have a great night.